Hi all, tonight is February the 16th and this is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. Hi all, before I play what is normally a second song, we had some very sad news this week. For those of you who partake in the Facebook page, you will know exactly who I'm referring to. A guy by the name of Rodney DeLoach, who we received this update, and it's not good news, sadly. Far too many of these types of openings to the show recently with Pat Johnson and others. Anyway, for those who are unaware, Rodney DeLoach had a massive stroke last Friday, and his left side of the brain is completely dead, and the stent they put in has failed. Multiple doctors have said that he will not recover, so our mum and his family have decided to honour his wishes and not to continue treatment. Within the next 24 hours, which is probably today, he will be moved from Erlanger to the Chattanooga Hospice Facility, and they will house him for the next 5 days. So if he doesn't pass before then, their family will have to try and place him somewhere in Georgia. Since he has been in comfort care, he hasn't been as alert as he has been. We will keep everyone updated as this process moves forward. This is a very difficult time for everyone, and a lot of challenging decisions have been made and will continue to be. Miracles do happen, so we are always hopeful. And the family thanks everyone for the support. This song's going out for Erin, who wrote that, Kathy, Rodney's girlfriend, and especially for Rodney DeLoach. This song is from all of us at Th&I.
When you walk through.
That was going out to Rodney DeLoach, a special member of Th&I and his family. It's sad. Too many. This empath stuff is hard at these times for us all. But this has been a long journey for many of us. And maybe some news tonight. The light at the end of the tunnel will be a lot sharper and a lot brighter. We've got a fair bit of intel, and there's been a lot of stuff that's gone on this week. Some of you will have caught it. A lot of positive stuff, which we all need a lift, and I think we're going to get it in this hour. Right, where do we start? I'm going to start with some news items before I get into the meaty stuff. We'll get that out of the way. California. I've got 3 stories about California this week. Fun and games. More than 180,000 people in Northern California were evacuated this week after an overflow channel in the US's tallest dam were found to be damaged. The actual dam itself allegedly is not at risk of collapsing, but the emergency spillway was close to caving in, officials said. There are rumours that this is a possible false flag. I will have more details in the intel on that. Anyway, officials feared the damaged spillway could release large amounts of flood water downstream, and the excess water now appears to be stemmed. But the evacuation orders over last weekend continued, and some have now returned, as I understand it. This is the first time that Lake Oroville, which lies 65 miles north of Sacramento, has experienced such an emergency in a dam's near 50-year history. However, since then, a secondary slipway was also found to be damaged, and in a statement posted on social media this week, they ordered residents to evacuate and repeating 3 times, "This is not a drill." Oh, the choice of words. The choice of words indeed. The California Department of Water Resources warned that the emergency spillway next to the dam was predicted to fail. Indeed. But I mentioned this going back, it's probably 24 months ago, about what appeared to be a deliberate plan of exodus out of California, and there's been many events since, and it hasn't changed much, but it's now reached business level. 24 Californian companies have said they are tired of the business bashing in Sacramento, along with the high taxes, and are now threatened to leave the state. This week, Proposition 30 was passed, which is now triggering an extra $6 billion in new annual taxes. Arizona has launched a campaign to lure some of California's top companies, and 24 chief executives are flying to Phoenix, Arizona this week to explore the land of lower taxes and much friendlier business environment. The guy in Arizona has said that the 24 CEOs has already committed to leaving California, and are going to be joining quite an exodus, going to the greater Phoenix region, which grew by 50,000 jobs in the last year. Meanwhile, many California companies are thinning their ranks. Chevron is moving 800 jobs from the Bay Area to Texas, and Waste Connections shifted more than 100 jobs also to Texas. Other Californian firms are also on the move. Apparently 254 companies in the last year of all shapes and sizes have left the state, primarily for other states. And the final one on Southern California is to do with the federal immigration officials and the arrests in South California this week, which has caused a lot of heightened anxiety about a promised crackdown by President Trump on people in this country illegally. The arrests sparked a protest in downtown Los Angeles last Thursday into Friday morning, with immigration advocates claiming that about 100 people have been taken into custody. But immigration officials disputed those numbers and said the arrests were part of routine activities, they would, and not tied to any new crackdown. Now, the situation has highlighted and caused a lot of fear amongst many immigrants about Trump's vow to deport those here illegally. Los Angeles and Orange counties are alleged to be home to 1 million immigrants living without proper papers. Some politicians have said they were demanding answers from federal authorities about the arrests, but meanwhile local police were fighting concerns that they were somehow involved in the new immigration actions, and many law enforcement agencies, including Los Angeles Police Department, have vowed not to take part in the mass deportations Trump and his supporters have promised. Well, there's another. So things are not going well in California. As you can see there, 3 separate incidents. Are they all related? It smacks of it to me. And like I said, there'll be a bit more in the intel section later on about California. Where are we next? This doesn't all go well. Brazil. The only reason I've read this particular story or want to cover it is a lack of personal responsibility. Now, what's happened is the police in the Brazilian state of Espírito Santo went on a 6-day strike, and 100 people were killed during that 6-day strike. Hundreds of troops patrolled streets attempting to keep order, with schools and businesses and closed down and public transport frozen. They had to wheel out the army, and they mobilised airborne troops and armoured vehicles last Thursday to reinforce roughly 1,200 soldiers and federal police trying to contain the chaos. Most of the violence was centred in Vitória, the state capital, a wealthy port city ringed by golden beaches and filled with mining and petroleum companies. They always protect the petroleum companies, don't they? The spokesman for the police union stated that we cannot establish definitive motives for these killings at this time, as the crisis is still ongoing. But an initial evaluation by the homicide division seems to indicate that a majority of those who have died were tied to drug trafficking or some other type of crime. The police in Espírito Santo are demanding a pay rise amid an economic downturn that has hammered public finances in Brazil, with many states struggling to ensure even basic healthcare, education and security services. This doesn't augur too well. Whether it was involving criminality remains to be seen, but just because the police decided to go on strike doesn't mean that people have to become lawless. You know, if we're going to look after ourselves, we have to show a lot more restraint and personal responsibility. This doesn't augur well. All this proves is we can't look after ourselves. We just become lawless. It doesn't augur well. Perhaps something to be considered and thought of in the future. America's biggest foreign creditors are suddenly having second thoughts about financing the US government. As a side note, the US government has no funds anymore. Rothschilds stole it out via mirror accounts. I'll have a lot more about Rothschilds and those clowns later. In Japan, who are the largest holder of treasuries, investors culled their stakes in December by the most in almost 4 years. What is striking is the selling has persisted at a time when going abroad has rarely been so attractive, and it's not just the Japanese either. Across the world, foreigners are pulling back from US debt like never before. From Tokyo to Beijing and also London, the consensus is clear. Very few overseas investors want to step into the 13.9 trillion US Treasury market right now, and it's not looking good. It can be, and you'll hear more about that later. Now, whilst nobody's saying that foreigners will abandon treasuries altogether, after all, they still hold 5.94 trillion in US treasuries, which is roughly 43% of the US government debt market. That, incidentally, is down from 56% in 2008. So it's a 13% drop, which is a significant drawdown that can harm major holders like Japan and China as much as it does the US. So the people are just not buying their debt anymore, and this is what's causing a lot of issues for the cabal and subsequently the people of those countries. Michael Flynn, former US National Security Advisor, allegedly resigned over allegations he discussed US sanctions with Russia before Donald Trump took office. Mr. Flynn is said to have misled officials about his call with a Russian ambassador before his appointment was made. Now, it's illegal for private citizens, which he was at the time, to conduct US diplomacy. US reports said earlier that the White House had been warned about the contacts last month and had been told Mr. Flynn might be vulnerable to Russian blackmail. There's a lot more to that than meets the eye. And it's not what people think either. I'll cover that in the intel section. Wasn't a good week for Mr. Flynn's family because Mr. Flynn Jr., who's one of Donald Trump's aides, has lost his job also after fanning a conspiracy theory, in inverted commas, that came to a climax last week in gunfire at a pizza place. Mr. Flynn left the US president-elect transition team on Tuesday following tweets about the so-called Pizzagate fake news story. His father, Michael Flynn, Mr. Trump's pick for the US National Security Advisor, also shared viral hoaxes. The Pizzagate claims led to a gunman firing shots in a restaurant last Sunday. In the armed confrontation, the suspect allegedly walked into Comet Ping Pong and pointed a rifle at an employee before firing shots into the ground. A guy by the name of Edgar Madison Welch from North Carolina has been charged with assault for a dangerous weapon. Mr. Flynn Sr. tweeted out outlandish conspiracy theorists accusing Mrs. Clinton and her aides of child sex trafficking. Outlandish conspiracy theorists? I don't think it is. One of his other tweets was that the allegation that President or former President Barack Obama was a jihadi who laundered money for terrorists. Time will tell. Where are we for time? Okay. UK. The cutbacks in the UK continue. Austerity doesn't appear to have any limits or any ending over there. They're now planning to strip its military personnel of legal protections in order to better protect itself from prosecution in future wars. Maybe one day we won't have future wars, so this won't come to fruition. The warning comes after a report into the soon-to-be-closed Iraq Historical Allegations Team and urged the UK to derogate from European human rights laws on the battlefield. Really? Enough putting soldiers in harm's way without I don't know, it's just beyond a joke. Hopefully the soldiers will all walk out and get better jobs and leave them with no army. The allegations team was repeatedly accused of pursuing soldiers on trumped-up charges over allegations of abuse during the occupation of Iraq. Soldiers could now be shut out of justice. The president of the Law Society has warned that such a move would be to the detriment of military personnel. Absolutely. Just put your guns down and come home. That should apply to the US troops as well. The estranged half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been killed in Malaysia. Police have confirmed, according to Reuters. The official cause of death remains unknown, but a report claims that he was poisoned by North Korean operatives. Or maybe not. Could it be part of the sweep? Oh, where are we? 2 more news items before we get into some more good stuff. I'm going to read this without laughing because I'm going to pass comment on it later. As concerns over Greece and its debt mount, Athens has reportedly decided to call in Rothschilds, one of the oldest financial firms in the world, to navigate the country's long-running creditor standoff and avert default. According to the Financial Times, Greek authorities hope to finalise the appointment before crunch debt talks with the Eurozone finance ministers on February the 20th. Sources told the FT that Rothschilds is expected to advise Athens on all areas connected to its debt, include negotiations with creditors, potential inclusion in the European Central Bank's €80 billion per month bond buying programme, and the resumption of Greek government bond sales. They added the bank will be paid a bonus when Greece regains access to global debt markets. Really? Last piece of news. The new US Defence Secretary has told NATO members that Washington will moderate its commitment to the alliance if they do not increase their spending on defence. James Mattis's comments repeat President Donald Trump's demand that members raise their spending to meet a target of 2% of their GDP. 2% of America's GDP is going to fund NATO. Really? Currently, only 5 of the 27 countries who are supposed to pay up do so. Mr. Mattis had hailed NATO as the fundamental bedrock of transatlantic cooperation. It very well might be, Mr. Mattis, but we, the American people, are tired of paying for everything. 800 bases, NATO, the list goes on and on and on. World police, some of that money has to come back to the people where it belongs. Right, I'm going to cover a couple of smaller stories before I get into the bigger one, and I may fit in the intel before the top of the hour, we'll see. This has been a quite extraordinary week, and this has not come. Any of this has come from alternative media, which many you will now notice contains absolutely nothing of any value anymore. Those particular sites that covered multiple news stories just seem to get worse by the week. They're not offering anything new, and this was forecast on this show. This has come direct from the mainstream media, and there's 4 items. People who think there's nothing, 5 items in fact. There's nothing going on. When you grasp this, then you understand everything is going on and everything is changing. The least positive is Trump's attack on the media, particularly today. Amongst his many comments, he says, never had there been a more dishonest group of people, that they were out of control, wild, feral, and most importantly, not to be trusted. He launched quite an extraordinary attack. That is a change. Whichever way you look at it, it's a change. A new bill has gone in this week and has been proposed by a senator who sees the potential for tracking humans to come to fruition. And this particular senator, Nevada State Senator Becky Harris, has put forward a Senate Bill 109 which would make mandatory microchipping of humans a Class C felony. This could be a preemptive measure against the worldwide push to implant humans with microchips, and the inspiration from the bill came from her constituents. A politician listening to its constituents? Ooh. Again, that's a change. Robert Kennedy and Robert De Niro have hosted an anti-mercury in vaccines press conference at the National Press Club. It must be one that they're not anti-vaccine, but they just want to make sure that all vaccines are safe. Basically, they were pushing forward is let's get mercury and aluminum out of all vaccines. They also discussed the connection between mercury and autism. Kennedy also spoke about mercury, vaccines, toxic fish, the studies, Big Pharma, the CDC, and also in his speech to the National Press Club. Again, this is people in the public suddenly coming forward and exposing what we knew for a very long time and have been telling the sleepers, and they've not been listening. It's changing. Probably the most extraordinary thing is what took place this week, and I'm going to read a portion of it out, is Ashton Kutcher. He has testified at a hearing in a Senate Foreign Relations Committee in Washington, D.C. yesterday, in the hopes of ending modern-day slavery and human trafficking. The fact that it's gone that far and into the public eye with a very public figure again shows signs of change. At the start of the hearing, Senator John McCain made a remark on Kutcher's appearance, telling the actors that he looked better in the movies. One would suggest Mr. McCain is rather nervous about what Mr. Kutcher was going to speak about. Mr. McCain, I've got news for you, squirrel chops. You've never looked good in anything. So please pipe down. We're not interested in your opinion. We're only just interested in you in handcuffs. So shut up. Mr. Kutcher opened with the following. I'm here today to defend the right to pursue happiness. It's a simple notion. It's bestowed upon all of us by our Constitution. Every citizen in this country has the right to pursue it, and I believe that it is incumbent upon us as citizens of this nation, as Americans, to bestow that right upon others, upon each other, and also upon the rest of the world. But the right to pursue happiness for so many is stripped away. It's raped, it's abused, it's taken by force, fraud, or coercion. It is sold for the momentary happiness of another. Kutcher acknowledged that internet trolls frequently tell him to stick his day job, so the actor defended his position by explaining what those day jobs are. Outside of his fame, Kutcher is a chairman and co-founder of Th&I, a company that builds software to fight human trafficking and the sexual exploitation of children. He's also the father of two, a 2-month-old son and a 2-year-old daughter, and insisted that he was at the hearing to defend their right to pursue happiness and ensure society defends that as well. During his appeal, Mr. Kutcher held back tears as he shared things he'd experienced during his travels to save children from trafficking, giving horrific examples of individuals who'd suffered sexual abuse. He also addressed what the government can be doing to prevent trafficking going forward, as well as what can be done for individuals after they are saved so they don't fall back into that world again. The right to pursue happiness is every man's right. I beg of you that if you give people the right to pursue, what you may find in return is happiness for yourself. Kudos to Mr. Kutcher for highlighting something that's largely been held in the alternative media realm. That has now gone right on to the mainstream. It's a big step for us in this form of media, that these stories, those four, Mercury, autism, vaccines, Trump calling the media completely dishonest and out of control, a new bill to stop microchipping and ending slavery and human trafficking. We'd have been jumping for joy for one of them 2 years ago, or even 12 months. This has all happened this week. Now I'm going to read this out and pass my own opinion on it, but also what happened this week. Mr. Trump signed an executive order. Some of you may have seen it, some of you may have grasped it. I'm going to lay clear what this executive order entails, because it's probably the most extraordinary executive order in American history. The Presidential Executive Order on enforcing federal law with respect to transnational criminal organisations and preventing international trafficking. Section 1. Purpose. Transnational criminal organisations and subsidiary organisations, including transnational drug cartels, have spread throughout the nation, threatening the safety of the United States and its people. These organisations derive revenue through widespread illegal conduct, including acts of violence and abuse that exhibit a wanton disregard for human life. They, for example, have been known to commit brutal murders, rapes and other barbaric acts. These groups are drivers of crime, corruption, violence and misery. In particular, the trafficking by cartels of controlled substances has triggered a resurgence in deadly drug abuse and a corresponding rise in violent crime related to drugs. Likewise, the trafficking and smuggling of human beings by transnational criminal groups risks creating a humanitarian crisis. These crimes, along with many others, are enriching and empowering these organisations to the detriment of the American people. A comprehensive and decisive approach is required to dismantle these organised crime syndicates and restore safety for the American people. Section 2. Policy. It shall be the policy of the executive branch to A. Strengthen enforcement of federal law in order to thwart transnational criminal organisations and subsidiary organisations, including criminal gangs, cartels, racketeering organisations and other groups engaged in illicit activities that present a threat to the public safety and national security and that are related to, for example, subsection 1, the illegal smuggling and trafficking of humans, drugs or other substances, wildlife and weapons. 2. Corruption, cybercrime, fraud, financial crimes and intellectual property theft. 3. the illegal concealment or transfer of proceeds derived from such illicit activities. Section B. Ensure that the federal law enforcement agencies gives a high priority and devote sufficient resources to efforts to identify, interdict, disrupt and dismantle transnational criminal organisations and its subsidiary organisations, including the thorough investigation, apprehension, prosecution of members of such organisations, the extradition of members of such organisations to face justice in the United States, and where appropriate and to the extent permitted by law, the swift removal from the United States of foreign nationals who are members of such organisations. Section 3. Maximise the extent to which all federal agencies share information and coordinate with federal law enforcement agencies as permitted by law in order to identify, interdict and dismantle the transnational criminal organisations and its subsidiary organisations. D. Enhance cooperation with foreign counterparts against transnational criminal organisations, including where appropriate and permitted by law, through sharing of intelligence and law enforcement information and through increased security sector assistance to foreign partners by the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security. E. Develop strategies under the guidance of the Secretary of State, the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security to maximise coordination amongst agencies, such as through the Organised Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, Special Operations Division, the Fusion Centre and the International Organised Crime Intelligence and the Operations Centre, to counter the crimes described in subsection A of this section consistent with applicable federal law, and to pursue and support additional efforts to prevent the operation's success of transnational criminal organisations and its subsidiary organisations within and beyond the United States. I'll repeat that again because it's key. Pursue and support additional efforts to prevent the operational success of transnational criminal organisations and its subsidiary organisations within and beyond the United States, to include prosecution of ancillary criminal offences such as immigration fraud and visa fraud, and the seizure of the implements of such organisations and forfeiture of the proceeds of their criminal activity. Section 3. Implementation. In furtherance of the policy set forth in Section 2 of this order, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Secretary of the Homeland Security and the Director of National Intelligence or their designees shall co-chair and direct the existing Interagency Threat Mitigation Working Group, which shall, Section A, work to support and improve the coordination of federal agency efforts to identify, interdict, investigate, prosecute and dismantle transnational criminal organisations and its subsidiary organisations within and beyond the United States. Work to improve federal agencies' provisions, collections, reporting and sharing of and access to data relevant to federal efforts against such criminal organisations. C. Work to increase intelligence and law enforcement information sharing with foreign partners battling transnational criminal organisations and subsidiary organisations, and also to enhance international operation capabilities and also cooperation. D. Assess federal agencies' allocation of monetary and personal resources for the identifying, interdicting and dismantling of the transnational criminal organisations and subsidiary organisations, as well as any resources that should be redirected towards these efforts. E. Identify federal agency practices, any absence of practices and funding needs that might hinder federal efforts to effectively combat transnational criminal organisations and subsidiary organisations. Review relevant federal laws to determine existing ways in which to identify, interdict and disrupt the activity of the transnational criminal organisations and subsidiary organisations, and ascertain which statutory authorities, including provisions under the Immigration and Nationality Act, could be better enforced or amended to prevent foreign members of these organisations and or their associates from obtaining entry into the United States and from exploiting the United States immigration system. Nearly finished, I think. Within 120 days of the date of this order, they must submit to the President a report on transnational criminal organisations and subsidiary organisations, including the extent of penetration of such organisations into the United States, and issue additional reports annually thereafter to describe the progress made in combating these criminal organisations, along with any recommended actions for dismantling them. Section 4. General provisions. Nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect 1. The authority granted by law to an executive department or agency or head thereof. 2. The functions of the Director of the Office of Management and Budget relating to budgetary, administrative or legislative proposals. This order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, its agencies, entities, its officers, employees or agents or any other person. Signed by Donald J. Trump, the White House, February the 9th. Now, transnational corporations, that's to me says it all. Everybody knows by now the spider's web all goes back to one central source, known as the cabal, the elites, and various other names. Some of them not repeatable at times. But transnational criminal organisations means cabal. That is it in its full glory. It's only cabal that have transnational organisations and subsidiaries. So they're now deciding to go after the cabal by executive order. The reason I mentioned or repeated a particular line is because of one word, the word within. Because many times here we've always looked or been told to look that the issue is thousands of miles away. It's always somebody else. So we don't see the elephant on our own soil. But to state, pursue and support additional efforts to prevent the operational success of transnational corporations, criminal organisations and subsidiary organisations within and beyond the United States means they're now going to address the cabal in this country. The fact that all the different agencies are being instructed that they must work together to bring this group down is again a sea of change. The agencies rarely speak to each other. They won't share information, largely because certain agencies are more corrupt than others. We're all well aware of that from this show and many others. Of course, there's one particular agency that is involved in all the crimes that are mentioned on that executive order. Perhaps, or hopefully, they're going to start in there. The fact that Mr. Trump went to Central Command this week in Tampa suggests something is afoot. The fact that he went from there to speak to the sheriffs suggests something else is afoot. I think he went there personally to warn them of what their duties are in accordance to this executive order. We're going after the cabal. That has become clear by the day. And the back scratching that's gone on. I've been saying there's a lot of posturing. There's also a lot of back scratching where alliances are being made with not so good people to appease certain things that then pushes the movement along. This is why I keep saying, or have been saying recently, things are not always what they seem. Certain appointments were not done because they were wanted. They were done to appease certain other groups at the time. It appears now there's no need to appease anybody. So those appointments have started to be removed. Mr. Flynn. So I'm going to have a music break and I'm going to come back with the intel. This song's going out to the cabal and their transnational criminal organisations. The bells are tolling. Hi all and welcome back to the second hour. I hope you liked that first hour. I hope you realise or grasp the sign of changes. Yes, it's been slow, but I did say this would be the unravelling. It's been an extraordinary week, and I hope Rodney got that message. But on our way, Rodney, you look after yourself, mate. But there's still a lot of work to be done. I posted recently a secrecy levels. Now, I've also been mentioning about a show called The Blacklist. And the more you go through the episodes, the more that looks like art mirroring life, like a script. Except it's our script, not theirs, ours. In that executive order, it mentions about agencies having to work together. They must work together. Now, this is one of the aspects in season 2 of the Blacklist, which is roughly, I think if memory serves me rightly, somewhere around the episode 14 through to the end, where it was covering the split between the FBI and the CIA. Well, of course, this show first announced the existence of a mirror group of the CIA, which has since splitted into another mirror group, as mentioned last week or the week before. So there's 3 versions of the CIA now, and they don't share information. And so subsequently, the reason they don't share it is because they're complicit in it more times than not. When you look at the executive order and the list of crimes, illegal conduct, acts of violence, exhibit a wanton disregard for human life, or we've all seen the torture techniques, brutal murders, in plenty of them, rapes and other barbaric acts, crime, corruption, violence and misery, deadly drugs. You could almost write CIA right through the whole lot of it. And the fact that it said within suggests they're going to clean house on our soil. Once we clean house on our soil, you'll find a lot of the issues around the world will also go away. Afghanistan. Bin Laden? Absolutely not. 6 months before America sent its loved ones to the slaughter, the Taliban decided to shut the poppy fields down, and the market collapsed. 6 months later we're in Afghanistan, and 6 months later all the fields are open with record production, all done by a particular agency operating on our soil, ran by the Bush cartel. So now, with this executive order, like I said, transnational, there's only the cabal who have transnational corporations, and criminal ones at that. The prevention of trafficking, which was highlighted in a recent show, that's the threat to do with the wall. Do I think that wall will eventually be built? Maybe not. If we remove the rogue elements who are sending kids and others for organ harvesting and all kinds of other heinous acts into the United States at the behest of the criminal transnational organisations within the United States, then we won't need a wall. You know my opinion on immigration. You know, I'm kind of popular on this show, judging by the comments from the listeners. But I'm not an American citizen or denizen. Do you think I should be thrown back? Yes, I've got legal papers, unlike some others. But if we're going to develop as a civilized society, the idea of calling anyone illegal is beyond my comprehension. Like I've said many times, how can you be illegal on your own planet? Just because someone's from a different country, which is created by the cabal, imaginary lines drawn on a piece of paper separating America from Canada or Mexico, doesn't mean those people are different. And the sooner we all realise that and coalesce, the better. Yes, you might not get on with certain people. That doesn't mean to say you're not going to get on with all the people. Yes, there's elements in the Middle East that don't like America or Americans. But then, if I was having my house bombed from 30,000 feet and hit with all kinds of artillery night after night after night with all my family members gone, I'd hate that particular group also. We've been kind of fortunate here. We've never, since the British, come under attack. Water prevents that or limits it. But if we'd have been closer to Europe or we'd have been closer to Asia, somewhere along the line, we'd have experienced what the Syrians and the Iraqi people and the Afghanistan people have suffered, all to do with criminality and nothing to do with jihadists or opposing our freedom or all the other bullshittery that they came out with, weapons of mass destruction. They knew there was weapons of mass destruction there because Bush et al. Gave them to Hussein to attack Iran. Agent Orange being one of them. And the British were involved in that. Sending, even during the sanctions, British companies were sending bits of piping saying it was for pipelines when it was for long-range artillery guns. Of course, the doctor, whose name escapes me in the UK, who was part of the group that went to Iraq to ascertain whether weapons of mass destruction were there, was murdered at the behest of Blair and his criminal thugs. So this executive order has the potential and the strong possibility of starting the end of the cabal altogether. Of course, in the series The Blacklist, the FBI turned on the cabal and so did the CIA. I think that's happening now. The CIA 3 and half of the CIA 2 will be the target. And any rogue entities operating on behalf of other countries will also be turfed out. Of course, you know who we're referring to with them. Anyway, back to that. I posted that secrecy table. So if people think that all this is so easy, you just remove the president, whoever that may be, or the prime minister, or certain politicians, when you realise that the president, the so-called leader of the planet, courtesy of the media, is roughly 20 levels below the top level of secrecy, then you realise how far you have to go to clean house. Because to get the secrecy that's contained in the 20 levels above down to the president, those whole 20 layers have to be destroyed or repurposed. Only then does the president have the full control of what goes on in this country. The 20 layers above the president are the puppet holders. They're the one who dangle the strings while the presidents sign bits of paper and play golf, like the last two. And Trump's no different. Yes, it'll appear he's doing this and it'll appear he's doing that. But until those elements above him are removed and he has full control, then he, like all the others, are the behest of the shadow government. And what has taken place now is, you'll all remember me even 12, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, maybe even 3, in Cosmic Voice, talking about a platform being provided. What is clear now is the platform is in place. That's why Mr. Flynn went. They're not tolerating or appeasing any groups anymore. The cavalry arrived and they're taking no prisoners. But bear in mind that secrecy table, 20 levels above the president. Those people have to be routed out, either realigned, re-educated or removed. Then we have a proper American government, not USA Inc., which can then operate for and by the people. The political divide between the two parties, many of you will now notice it's reached epidemic proportions, almost like soccer rivalry, well, it's like the soccer rivalry back in England. I'll stick with that. I know there is rivalry in sport here, particularly in Chicago. Only because I know some people in Chicago. They have an intense rivalry up there. I think it's the Green Bay Packers, and I can't even remember the other one is. But that type of division and hatred and rivalry has become more and more here. That will eventually settle down, but it's another sign of the total split and divide of the conquer, not of the people, but of their system. Betsy DeVos was blocked from entering a school this week. I don't know whether she eventually got in. She doesn't appear to have an ounce of knowledge on education anyway, so I don't think she's going to have much value. I think she was came part of the package for providing the platform. Make of that what you will. Mr. Trump said America first. Yes, but let it not be at the expense of others. That's important also. Initially, we have to look after ourselves, contrary to the opinion of many others, and including the media and alternative media. The American people have provided far too much for far too many, and it's time we were looked after. NATO, all the bases around the world provided for it's not just American cabal. Bear in mind, large chunks of them are Europeans. But we have to pay for it. Time that ended. Right, we're going to go into some of anti-Rothschild intel. Some bits rather good. Where are we next? California, as I mentioned earlier in the first hour, is one of the main issues. And that particular hook-nosed family everybody loves, not the Rothschilds. They're the ones trying to take control of America by creating a lack of water. And it's not just California either. They are talking about increasing HAARP here to prevent rain and create permanent droughts. So they've gone from taking over the finances to now taking over, or attempting to take over, American resources, including including water. What it's become increasingly obvious now is it's the Rothschilds and their minions against the rest of the world. Surely at least one country can take care of these parasites once and for all and end it for all of us. It doesn't have to be this country. Actually, it would be quite nice if some other country did it for once. Of course, now they are threatening Greece again, so they can take over their in-ground assets and leverage from it. The reason they're trying to leverage is that they're running out of funds rapidly. So, debt advisors. That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Rothschilds, debt advisors. Anyway, here's the good news. It hasn't all been one-sided what the Rothschilds are doing. The group affiliated to this show have fired back at the Rothschilds this week and called in all debts the Rothschilds owe, which dates back to the Orthodox Church and the Russian Empire, and was lumped in with all debt of Eastern Europe all the way down to Turkey. One huge debt recall. A massive, massive, massive figure. Now this will stir the pot into a rather vicious vortex, and a certain rotating fan will start to spin very fast now. Rest assured, the fight is being taken to them. So as I said earlier, Rothschilds, debt advisors, the irony of that. The real thing is yes, they advise debt, okay, how to get into debt, and then how to get over your head in debt, call in the debt, and then they take your assets as a part payment, not total payment. You still have to pay it back, but they take assets. They're after the Greek ports and islands and in-ground resources. Rothschilds as debt advisors, my arse. Like I said, about time one country took them out. Here's another example. This is Rothschilds again, of their complete arrogance and also a total disregard for anyone with an IQ over 80. They have issued a worldwide offer this week to all military, and that they will split 50-50 any gold that any military group manages to seize in a raid on a country. So the military go in, seize all this gold, and the Rothschilds take 50% of it. Okay. Except there's only two problems with that. Many of the military now won't listen to what they're saying. The Rothschilds have not paid on one split deal of anything promised to anywhere in 500 years. Not one. And the other one, Why would the group seize the gold and give Rothschilds half of it? You know, who do these people think they are? Of course, they lost Africa. They lost the UK recently. This week, they lost the Vatican. Vatican told them where to go. They are still trying to pursue the Commonwealth countries again. And I think it's time for the Queen to really step up and give something back to the people. She's not signing off on any orders and preventing them continuing their fun and games. Of course, she had all her gold taken off her to keep these type of people in the game. So she has nothing now. Message to the Queen is, seeing as the Commonwealth countries are under threat, she can issue or declare emergency war powers right now. Once you declare emergency war powers, you can underwrite and sign off on all kinds of agreements. But like the Patriot Act, remember? And declare instant sovereignty for all Commonwealth countries, all 52 of them. This will totally collapse the UN, the IMF, and Hughes and our World Bank buddies in one stroke of the pen. 52 countries, which includes America, Canada, Britain, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, India, Australia, New Zealand. They're the ones I can remember off the top of my head. All them countries carry an awful lot of clout. All of them declaring sovereignty in one stroke of a pen ends the fun and games within a week. Because then that provides another platform on a higher level. Not just in America, in 52 countries. Those 52 countries can then go and tell the rest of the world, you either come on board with what we're doing or go away. We're not trading with you. End of game. So if China wants to continue, or elements in China want to continue their world domination at the expense of Russia, which has kind of peeved off Russia. Russia's gone quiet and is pulling out of operations because they, along with the Chinese government, are going after the Chinese faction or the Asian faction. Mercenaries, or slaves, as they are actually called by the paymasters. Nice how they treat their people, but that's what they call them. Are now mainly turning against the cabal, and the cabal have now got little or no ET support anymore. They're isolated. Totally isolated. The governments have turned against them, the agencies have turned against them, and their own mercenaries are now starting to turn against them. Here's a name you haven't heard much. Next piece of news. JP Morgan. Yes, them clowns. Are claiming in South America this week that it is a representative of the American government, and all sales of commodities must be given to JP Morgan. You can't make this stuff up. Rest assured that incident is being cleaned up and prevented. Next news item. As promised, would take place a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago. China is crushing and winning against the dragons and the factions in Asia. this particular aspect of the clean-up should be completed before Easter. Furthermore, the Chinese faction and the Rothschilds are now in a heated battle, arguing about whose incompetence has led to them losing. Of course, we knew that the Asian faction had failed because Rothschilds tried to get back into the West via the UK a couple of weeks ago and failed. UK told them where to go. So now the Asian faction and the Rothschilds are arguing as well. Maybe some of the Asian faction can do some payback and do us a favour, and then step down from your silly games. It's over. The people are going to win, and we're going to get the planet back into proper civilized order. It's gone too far. You're not going to win. Furthermore, the Chinese government have thrown out many of the Dragon members who have seats in their Politburo and are heading for a full, clean government over there. Final piece of news is the Ukraine news of all kinds of bullshittery is just that. Total bullshittery. It's more distraction, sleight of hand, while they try to play fun and games. But that bullshittery is not working anymore. Their sleight of hand's not working anymore. Their programs are not working anymore. Their finances are not working anymore. Their mercenaries are not working for them anymore. They're working against them. So when people say there's not much going on, I hope you like that news. There is more, but I can't release it just yet. But I think that's enough to get people rather excited. I am. We're heading rapidly to some kind of closure. But like I said, don't think everything's going to happen overnight. If you've watched the Blacklist and seen all the criminal organisations and how deep it goes and how organised it is, the underworld, there's an awful lot of clearing up to do. And the depth of it is extraordinary. Even in the levels of secrecy. If we're going to have a clear and transparent, proper American government, not just American, the other 209 countries also, the idea of secrecy above the level of the President or the Prime Minister in a transparent world, as a famous president says, is repugnant. All those layers had to be brought down so that the information contained within those layers can then be lowered down to the level of the president, who can then disseminate that information. So much work still to be done, but much progress has been done, and much progress even beyond what is announced on this show has also been accomplished. Alright, I think that's it for the intel and the news. We'll go into some questions, bundles of them. I'm going to start with one. The People's Club, which is the foundation we're waiting to start. The sweeps that are ongoing will facilitate that to be open. It's not open yet because of rogue elements. But the People's Club, is it part of Drake and or Neil anymore? It was never part of Drake and or Neil to begin with. The foundation people approached me in private and wanted me to run it solely. Now obviously I was involved with Drake at the time, and so Drake became part of it. But then obviously we had the split and it just reverted back to the original. It was my choice whether to involve Drake or not, at the behest of the foundation people. I chose to involve Drake, but Drake and Neil parted ways. So the People's Club is solely the Truth, Honour and Integrity group. What's the difference between a soul and a spirit? None. Same thing. I'm going to be covering about souls, spirits, Th&I, death, life, creation of people, planets, solar systems, universes, and every aspect of ETs, who did what, when, where and why. Also how they distorted creation that led to the conditions that we're currently in. It's going to go into AI, it's going to go into synthetics, it's going to go into every aspect of life. That show is probably a week away. It's going to be a lot of brand new material. A whole chunk of it is mine, and also a document I received that was actually done about 19 years ago, but never released until recently. And so that will cover some of the scientific aspects of it, which is very, very heavy. You'll probably have to listen to it a few times. It's gonna take probably the full 3 hours. I'm up to 20 pages of notes, and it's going to cover every aspect of life, cosmos and ET and everything. A bit like the Future of Humanity show we did in 2015 and the Faction show rolled into one. So look forward to that. I may do it Sunday, I may do it next Tuesday. I'm putting the final touches to it now, so that'll be good. Did Homo erectus and the Neanderthals have souls? Yes. Do identical twins have different souls? Yes. Do souls reincarnate when reincarnating tend to stick to their physical families? No. Can souls with their memories wiped still recognise their soulmates? Yes. So that's a few rapid fire ones from the email. No, I don't know anything about the lecturer Leonard Horowitz. Apologies for that. And next. If Trump is not a Jesuit Zionist, why did he block Obama's aid package to Palestine while giving billions in welfare to Israel? Jesuit and Zionist are two separate entities altogether. Mr. Trump has said consistently for the last 18 months has connections to some of the Zionist entities. That hasn't gone away. Of course, Mr. Nutty Asshole decided it was okay to build settlements because Trump would give him the go-ahead. I would suggest with the current platform that may not be as lenient. We'll see. But Trump was supported heavily by the AIPAC group, which is Zionist, not Jesuit. Do the Draco use Latin, or did they invent Latin only for human use? It wasn't necessarily the Draco, it was the reptilian that created Latin. It's their language. Not all reptilians are Draco. With the current rate of organic-synthetic divide ongoing, would capital D disclosure be redundant, or at least serve only to shake out the last people stuck in the system? The latter. Any type of disclosure is designed to shake more and more out of the slumber. In this show I just mentioned, I will give the full evidence of how and why they are in that slumber. It's quite detailed, so I'll probably be able to answer that question better in that show. Is Iran backed by Draco or good ET? Don't know on that one. Draco are now nearing their end. Like I said earlier, the Cabal have got little to no ET support anymore to pull off their fun and games. That's why they've been losing heavily. I've watched Byron Katie's YouTube participants working through their adverse reactions of Mr. Trump. In respect of your recent discussions regarding working through our shadow selves, would you consider this a good illustration of how our shadow sides control our present behaviour? Present meaning how we behave, react on a daily basis to events seemingly outside of ourselves. Yes, it is. Quite often, people get angry. We've all seen it sometimes on the page, not so much in Th&I as it did in Cosmic Voice. More times than not, those people don't get banned, because we all have bad days. A reflection of anger is generally a reflection of coming from an issue with the person projecting the anger, and so they'll use a target to project on rather than look within. Most anger comes from within, and this is why over the last 18 months I've been telling people, deal with your shadow sides, do your inner work. As you go through all the successive layers, some of you will have lots of layers to go through, lots of trauma events. Others mightn't have as many. As you go through those layers, you find yourself being a lot more balanced and a lot more calmer. If you're imbalanced and calm, the chances of you projecting anger are much reduced. That's what they want you to be like. That's why all the divide and conquer, hate, anger, violence, all low vibration. If you're in the middle, which is what I'm telling people to do, heightened excitement's not too good either, due to dilution. That's why they create sports stadiums that way and make the game appear as like it's an act of chance when it's all scripted, like the current or recent Super Bowl. An unlikely victory all had people sitting on the edge of their seats. Heightened sense of what's to come, or a fear of losing, particularly from the team that was way ahead. All creating heightened emotions. to maximum effect. But if you're in a calmer and balanced state, they can't get at you, or not as easily, put it that way. Again, I'll be covering that aspect in its deeper form in this special show. Where are we? This is a fairly long one. I'll have to break it down. If a person doesn't want to reincarnate in an organic body here or on any planet elsewhere, is it service to self? No. The soul is selfish or selfless. I said it last week about spirituality. Spirituality is about you. Can it affect the all? Yes, it can. But religion is all encompassing, divide and conquer. Spirituality is about the soul growth of you only. And if you complete the evolutionary cycle for this planet, which it's another item I'll be covering in this show, you then go onto the cosmic level of soul choice. So instead of plonking yourself on a planet, you could be creating them. So how's that service to self? It's not. So I hope that answers that portion. When I try to answer these questions for myself, it doesn't make sense that humans are the only species on this planet that need clothes. The animals don't need it. They are adapted to the climate. So Earth is originally an animal planet. No. It has had many species, humanoid, humans, and obviously the lizard variety. I'm going to leave that to the special show, because that will explain that as well. I'm going to find a lot of that's going to cover in there. So now you know the depth of that show. Let me see if I can pull up some more less heavy questions that can all be explained in that one show. Is Google and Black Goo connected, and are they going to use Google as the brain for the human synthetic cyborg? Anything that uses AI is part of the problem. The main AI is rendered not dangerous anymore. I wouldn't say it's particularly good, but it's certainly not causing the harm or damage it did do, and largely to a point it's been negated. There's another system replacing it until we get fully educated and brought up to speed. My own personal opinion then is we don't want or need AI. When people find out who and what they are, the idea of needing the machine is mind-boggling. But yes, Google have the large computers that play into the central control system, or did. Is my request for a public event getting any traction? The sick joke being played on the masses is increasingly difficult to tolerate. Yes, it is. And maybe we might need it, given what I announced in the first hour and portions of this hour also. But we will have some sort of public event. It may be the full-on public event, but do not expect it to be ET disclosure. that's a long way off, as I understand it. We may get some hints at certain things, but the full on then means certain ones may have to come down, and I'm not sure that, given the damage that's been done in here to this on a soul level and to the vessel, I fear it may be too much. There's an awful lot to come out about child trafficking and other heinous acts to do with children. That's going to tip people over the edge, never mind ET disclosure. Why can't the UPU intervene in the Conservative government making sick and disabled people find work or they lose their benefits? So many have committed suicide. It's scandalous. Well, the UPU are not there to intervene with political decisions. They're there to block and prevent any outside influence. Said this before, we fix our own issues. We have to fix our own issues. ETs are not coming down to fix Tory governments or Republican or Democrat. That's silly human decisions. It's up to the public in Britain to cause enough stink without violence, without smashing things up. There's no need for that. And tell them, you'll put that benefits back, otherwise we're going to disrupt everything. It's quite easy to shut down London. You only have to block the roads in, or block the transport system, and it brings London to a grinding halt, costing them billions. It'll be cheaper if they reverse those decisions. So again, it's up to the people to do something. The longer you carry on ignoring these ridiculous cuts, the more they're going to do it. Because if people don't stand up and complain, they'll just carry on. This has been part of the problem, and this is where we're responsible, because we've just allowed it because we're too lazy or too busy, or there's something more exciting out of playing computer games or sports on. We've just allowed it. Do you think it would be possible to have a partial disclosure on both the cabal and the ET situation, limiting the amount of negative information released on cabal activities, allowing people time to deal with the basic facts, then release the rest over the coming years? Well, that's kind of what we've been doing on this show, although we have pointed out both sides. But then a lot of you are familiar with certain aspects or certain portions of it to be able to give you most of the full information when safe to do so. With regards to it going into the mainstream, again, we've had partial disclosure. People have heard about the interfering with kids at the Catholic Church, and yet ignored it and still go to church on a Sunday. People have heard about Pizzagate, but they're that easily distracted these days that it goes in one ear and out the next. And it has to be handled very sensitively. But it also has to be blanket coverage for it to go into their heads. One announcement's not going to cut it. 24/7 for a few weeks and cancel the sporting events while people get a grasp of what is been going on this planet would be my idea forward. yes, the more hideous aspects and more unpalatable aspects should be released over time. In fact, regarding the child sexual ritual stuff, I'm not so sure that should be made public to the extent where we're having trials on TVs. That's going to send people into low vibration. We need people in high vibration. So I partially agree with you, but I made the proposition that those people who are involved in Pizzagate and all the rest of the stuff should be put on trial. But some trusted members of the alternative media should oversee that justice is done. I do not want to see it 24/7, aka O.J. Simpson style. It's not going to help people. Files should be available on the internet for people to then go and review when they're ready to do it, not be thrust in their face when they think it's all beyond comprehension. Most of us think it's beyond comprehension, some of the things they've been doing. So what chance have they got? Zero. It's just going to send the whole brain to meltdown. On this person asking the question, on the ET disclosure, focus mostly on the positive ones and their actions with limited information on the negative ones. Well, you can't have disclosure without mentioning what they've done. You know, they're not all ascended masters and patronising us as dear ones, like some of the new age clowns on the internet. The reality is there's been 24 races involved in here, and all of them have seeded their genetics here, so they think they have control of us. It's fairly widespread, and it's not just reptilian type or the bug-eyed bastards, it's humanoids as well. Again, I'll be covering some aspects of that in this show coming up. So the more heinous acts to do with the negative ETs, again, shouldn't be part of the initial disclosure. It shouldn't be anywhere near it. That's for when people have stabilised, and that's why I think on that particular note we may have a number of years to wait before we get disclosure on that, because there's going to be enough with small d. Right, that hour went quick. I'm going to play some music and we'll be back with more questions and answers in the final hour. There we go. Hi all, and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show. Some more Q&As. Let's go through a bit more of this one. Now, when more and more sovereign human souls decide to not come in again and stay away from this physical existence, is that the real nature of Earth will become visible eventually? Less humans? Yes, there's less humans here than you realise, because the idea that there's 7 billion here is is a bit of a laugh. I have to say that. The figures do not stack up or support it. You know, all the deaths, wars, pandemics, you got a whole country developing where you can only have one child, and the famine, you know, 27,000 children per day dying of malnutrition. Yes, that's per day. And yet they're telling us that we've increased the population near 50% in the last 30 to 40 years. Don't think so. Physical existence, isn't it all about sustaining the body and surviving? No, it's not. We're not here to survive. We're not here to be abused either. We have been surviving because of the criminal element and the rogue entities that have been operating here for far too long. This person goes on, even if life becomes peaceful and rebalanced, we are in a 1, 2 or 3 type civilization, does it make any difference? Because it will still be about limitations of having a body with its needs. Isn't a body a source of prison anyway? In essence, we should never, as soul beings, or certainly some of the ones that are in here, should never have been tempted. Maybe they weren't tempted, maybe they were forced and trapped here. Some very special beings here on this planet, or what would be considered special. Nobody's any more special than anybody else, in my opinion. But society would dictate there's some special beings in here on a cosmic level that have been trapped. Now the limitations are, when we realise, are largely self-imposed. Again, that's something I'll be covering extensively in this special show. About the negotiations elsewhere in the cosmos, sending military types instead of spiritual beings, do we have a zero type universe? Well, this universe was rather dark, and it was considered a council decision, whichever council that may be, there are many of them, that they were going to pull this universe all together to protect the cosmic or universal tree. Certain beings decided it was worth saving. Rumour has it that it was 86% dark, and largely this universe is clearing out and more light is coming in by the day. But it's taken a long time, many aeons, to fix it. Final portion of this particular email is, if we do not get our memories back, we will also not get the knowledge back from previous lifetimes. Well, that's not exactly if that has not been decided. At the end of the day, it's a collective choice of which you put forward your soul's choice. My advice is, given all of the disclosure that's coming out, is the overload of the trauma that led us into the no memory situation would be too much. Again, this is something I will cover in depth in this particular up and coming show. If we don't get all the knowledge back from previous lifetimes, well, that's a personal soul choice. Once you end your physical life here, then you will have access to your previous lifetimes. The danger is certain ones are pushing for it during the lifetime. I'm not so sure that that's a good idea. Final portion, isn't it important for the human collective to get our knowledge back? And is having the fear of facing trauma the correct way to avoid looking into the past? Well, if you don't know the levels of the trauma, and it's quite extensive and very, very heavy, far heavier than what we're experiencing here in this lifetime, then perhaps you would think again. But at the end of the day, it's not my choice. It's the collective's choice. The collective chose to not remember they went into the city of light. So it was really the city of dark. Those of you who followed the 100 series will know what I'm talking about. Where are we next? Has the Fukushima radiation been neutralized? In my opinion, yes. There's no evidence of it being an issue. If there's other issues of radiation to do in the Pacific and on the West Coast, it's got sod all to do with Fukushima. Like I said, there was a video that was pulled taken just after 2 or 3 weeks, within the first month, by a Japanese scientist with a Geiger counter. He was on site. He had the video, and the radiation was background level. So, to my knowledge, certain groups of ETs came in and cleaned it up within 3 days. So, where's the radiation coming from? That's the key. You know, the fact that they're still pushing Fukushima. You know, we in Europe, and Britain in particular, we lost a lot of livestock because of the issues with Chernobyl. But after 6 years, those issues kind of went away. The news reporting went away. I'm not saying there wasn't some lingering issues surrounding it. But on March the 11th, which is less than 3 weeks away, it's 6 years since that event, and they're still pushing it. If they're still pushing it, then they're pushing it for a reason to cover something else up, see through it. Because if the radiation was at the levels they're reporting it at, why hasn't every country in the world gone in and fixed it? Chernobyl got fixed. It's bullshittery. I'm sorry, but it just is. What's up with the leaks in Trump's admin? No, it's posturing, and the platform is being provided, and so the ones that were placed there to appease certain other groups now don't have to be appeased, and so certain ones will be removed. Vaccine issues, I think we covered that with the Kennedy and De Niro. Will Snowden, Manning and Assange get released? I would suggest that I think Manning is on the point of being released in May, if memory serves me correctly. As for Assange or Snowden, I don't know about that currently. Holden and Obama in California, why? Maybe they're giving guns to the cartel again, who knows, or playing golf. You know. As for any other reason, I've no idea currently. Any word on the pipeline? No, nothing's changed. They still have to come up with 12 billion themselves to carry on with that pipeline. Where are we? I notice some people are not experiencing any ascension symptoms, while people around them are falling over with symptoms. Is it possible that these non-symptomatic people are synthetics? It's possible. I'm gonna perhaps leave that again for this special show coming up, because it will explain a lot better and a lot deeper why and how certain ones are receiving it and certain ones aren't. Will militia veterans get involved in the issues in the United States? I would suspect not. I think there's enough to deal with the issues without getting them involved. The militia, in my opinion, and I apologies to the ones who were willing to step forward and help save this country, but there's an awful lot who are cowardly, in my opinion, and also an awful lot who have allowed infiltration in their ranks, and that has to be routed out also. Hopefully, if we get the platform provided and everything gets resolved the way we want it to be, then something will be put in place where the militia are fully trained, preferably by the military people, given I'm hoping that they will be goose-stepping around the world still. So that will be a job for the returning military to fully train the militia into what it should be in this country, so we never get in this situation ever again. That's what they were set up for. The fact that the large majority have failed the people of this country suggests those organisations should be shut down and revamped. Like I said, I know there's a lot of militia who are more than willing to step forward and put their lives on the line for the rest of us. This is not against you. I've spoken to many of them, but there's an awful lot running around playing toy soldiers, shooting defenceless animals in the woods and thinking that's cool and the way forward for training. No, it's not. Karma, again, I'm going to leave that to this show. So apologies. I'm going to cover that in the special show. Where are we next? There's an awful lot of questions that are going to be covered in that show. So now you know the depth of it. So if I've missed your questions, you'll understand it will be contained in that special show. Was the firing retirement of General Flynn planned? Was it a trap? No, Mr. Flynn walked into his own trap. He thought he could operate outside the government. He thought wrongly. Where are we next? Is President Trump astute, or is he a bumbling idiot? His current actions speak of both brilliant or brilliantly stupid. Neither. Like I said earlier, when you've got organisations that are at least 20 levels above the president, or the so-called president, he has no clout to carry out anything. Is this one involved a bit more? Yes, he is. Is he dictating policy? No. It's all scripted for him, like the previous incumbents, except this time the script is of a better nature for the people and not for the criminal syndicates that have gone before him. So if everything is going well currently, Trump will be a national hero, and kudos to him. The idea that it's all down to Mr. Trump negates the efforts of many behind the scenes. They're the ones that are dictating policy. There's been a lot of effort on behalf of our group with this show. It was our group that put forward HR 193 declaring American sovereignty. That not Mr. Trump. So this is kind of the way politics works as it stands. You know, I used to say often over the last four years, or the 3.5 years I've been on the radio show, you can't blame Mr. Obama for everything, because it's not him that dictates policy. He's just there to sign off on it. And Trump's no different, but he is participating, but he has too many in his ear at the moment. But thankfully most of them are of a better variety that's more people based and not corporation and criminal activity based. Any word on the former President Obama and his army of 30,000, and just what are they going to do? Well, Mr. Obama is affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. Whether that army will go anywhere is, I would say, unlikely. Perhaps his real army is 30,000 golf caddies, since he spent most of the time in the last 8 years playing golf. If we are supposed to handle things on our planet ourselves, why do we have things, aliens, watching over us? Because to prevent interference from outside. That is all. They will not interfere on the ground. They have assisted on the ground, but they cannot direct interfere on the ground. Certain rogue elements were removed by the council because we campaigned for them to be removed, because the damage they were doing on what is now considered solely our planet, not theirs. Why do we dream to forget? No, we don't dream to forget, but there's two aspects to this. Many of you will dream for maybe 2 hours, but the spirit that does the dreaming, that goes out of the vessel, may be gone for 30 years, depending on where it's gone to. Just because the vessel has limitations doesn't mean the spirit has. And so, if I asked Miles, who asked this question, if I asked you what did you have for lunch on December the 3rd, you wouldn't be able to tell me, unless it was a special day. And the reason being is our brain doesn't have enough RAM to remember everything that took place in the dream time. Sometimes you come back and it's best not to remember. Some of you may be operational, so you get forewarning of what is to come on the ground, or what is to take place in the dream realm. So the last thing you want is somebody coming back into the 3D vessel remembering operational tactics. As part of the problem here is there's certain beings who can use telepathy to draw out what you remember. They can't do it out there. So that's something to consider. Why do we have a past only never to remember them? Are they related? Well, we do have a past. Some do remember. In fact, more in recent times, because of certain changes around the planet, are now remembering a lot more. Not all, but some are. But the memory wipe, because we took the chip or the pill, a long time ago still persists. So that's why when you reincarnate, you should have some memory. Some do. Some still have a glimmer. I would suggest some of those people that do remember were not for here anyway. Maybe they're part of the group that came in and sacrificed themselves to being here to fix it from the inside. That will also be covered extensively in this special show coming up also. Hebrew race and the belief that they are the chosen people, the chosen ones. I have found there's an arrogance in their belief system and culture. Well, if you keep repeating to a certain group of people, and it doesn't matter whether they're Hebrew or British or American, it sticks. They're not the chosen ones, they're not the chosen people. Nobody was. But they are closely related in both origin and where they live to the race that were called the chosen ones, which was the Anunnaki. And that is why they're called the chosen ones, because their descendants were Anunnaki. Probably make this the last one, I think. Where are we? There's one I've left. I seem to have gone down the page far too often. Sorry for that, Lisa. With so much of our known world, language, science, archaeology, human origins, religion, history, space exploration, monetary, taxation, criminal justice, medical, education, political, integrity of our free press systems, and even our food, water and air being revealed as poisonous, false, corrupt and ongoing lies, how can we know all the revealing and resulting upheaval is part of yet another grand plan to distract us all and stall us for more time? There is some element to that, and it's to do with the transhumanism. We have to be very, very careful with that. Again, it's something I'll be covering in a special show. Lisa goes on, distract and stall for more time while compromises are made by and for the perpetrators, and to make just about any alternative presented seem like a good choice going forward. Yes, that's all part of their sleight of hand, except the sleight of hand is not working anywhere near as well as it used to. People are seeing through it now. People are knowing if they're pushing certain things, it's to cover others. The greatest thing we have to do once the Cabal are removed is halt the technology program. I can't stress how important that is, because we could walk into another disastrous situation along the same lines, if not worse, than the first one, which has created the mess that we're in now. So, technology, we have to be very, very careful. And like I said in a previous show, one of the proposals I've put in is that once the sweeps are completed and we're heading towards better lives, that we have a multidisciplinary task force that analyses every piece of technology on this planet, with the premise, is it beneficial to humanity or is it not? If it's not, in my opinion, it should be destroyed and never see the light of day again. We failed in the past due to technology. Let us not repeat that stupidity going forward. Right. If you lead life in love and care, you will prevail. If you lead life in fear and anger, you will fail. Feel free for you to be the person you wish to be, not the person who conforms to what others want them to be. You are a multi-dimensional being, operating simultaneously on many levels. You are not here to conform. You are not here to be stifled. You are not here to be enslaved. And you certainly aren't here to be abused. You're not here to compete with your friends, family or neighbours either. You are here to be the best you can be and do so as the crown of creation. Now go out with the confidence of who and what you are and excel in yourself, and in doing so inspire others. I hope you've enjoyed the show tonight. There's lots, it was packed with a lot more positive news, apart from the sad news about Rodney DeLoach. We wish him and his family well, and if the worst comes to the worst with Rodney, we've all have our own personal memories of him on the page, and we will all wish him well on his journey. The song is for Rodney. Bye for now.
I'm sad to say it's time to go.